Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 4 of Spy Family. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. The more I listen to it, the opening theme is really growing on me. So, this is where the rubber really meets the road for Spy Family. They're getting ready to attend the meeting at the school to determine if Anya really is a fit for Eden Academy. So naturally, Operation Strix is basically hinging on whether or not this goes well. Of course, Twilight has prepared as much as he possibly could in terms of coaching them on what answers would be good for the interview itself. But he's also sort of planned for the contingency that they're being watched as they approach the academy. And as it turns out, that was a reasonable thing to do, considering there are... You wouldn't call them spies, but I guess proctors, examiners, people who are watching and presumably disqualifying families they deem as not being worthy of attending Eden Academy. And considering how prestigious it is supposed to be, I'd imagine the vast majority of the families aren't going to make the cut. So already, it seems like this crop of students isn't particularly impressive considering how many of them have failed so far. And the headmaster here is sort of echoing that. Having read the manga, he's a bit of a character. He's fairly serious, but he's pretty fixated on the concept of elegance and that he really doesn't want inelegant people attending Eden Academy. So, of course, Lloyd puts up a front of elegance, and Yor and Anya just sort of follow suit because they don't know any better. It seemed to work well enough. So Henderson here, he's sort of smelling a rat, because based on Anya's performance on the test, he would think that they would not have the class to salute the founder of the academy, but that they did sort of... It doesn't necessarily unsettle him, but I think it's a mix of him saying, my intuition wasn't quite correct, something's up here, or he simply just overlooked them. In either way, he's kind of disconcerted. So this sequence here always kind of stuck out to me when I was reading. Why would an academy that prides itself on elegance have, I guess, allowed something like this to happen, where a student essentially besmirches the uniform by being stuck in a drainage ditch? And, of course, the reason behind all this is that it's a test, you know. If you soil yourself saving the kid, you have proven yourself unworthy. So I think, notably, is that Lloyd he steps right in the sewage to lift the kid out. You know, there might have been a more tactful approach, but I think it was almost a measured thing on Lloyd's part to just sort of like, maybe not snub Eden Academy, but to sort of like rub it in their face a little bit, considering he had also planned ahead to bring a fresh set of clean clothes. So this is essentially like Lloyd's way of saying, ooh, we really are high class after all, look at us, we contrived to bring extra clothes. So fortunately for the foragers, this seems to hit exactly the notes Henderson was looking to find in people. So, as if a kid being stuck in a sewage ditch weren't bad enough, there seems to be a stampede from the Academy's farm. And, you know, I'd imagine stampedes are pretty dangerous, especially to, you know, idle rich types who don't have much familiarity with animals. To make matters worse, while the other obstacle was planned, this is a true accident where something has hit the fan. So once again, Lloyd shows his true character by rescuing some upper-class snob's brat from being trampled by a cow. And in doing so, it looks like he shredded his suit jacket, which is obviously not very elegant. But at the same time, you know, I would think the valor of the situation would outweigh the wardrobe malfunction, at least in my mind. So as is sort of becoming a reoccurring theme, Yor has let the mask slip a little bit. You know, she managed to incapacitate a pretty big cow. Like, those things weigh a couple 100 pounds. And she just, like, smacked it around like it was nothing. You know, and she sort of, like, explains the way, like, ooh, I learned yoga and pressure points, ha ha ha. That explains why I can, you know, overpower a cow. But fortunately, between that display of harmlessly stopping the animal and Anya going to sort of comfort it, you know, I would think such a display of grace under pressure would work definitively in their favor. And it would seem like Henderson agrees. You know, that's what makes me think, despite all of the pomp and circumstance he projects, He's a pretty good guy after all, you know? So, as a bit of thanks for resolving the situation as painlessly as possible, he sort of informs the forgers that, you guys, your clothes are ruined, go get some new clothes and come back. You have my permission. Of course, just to highlight the absurdity of everything, Lloyd happened to have prepared another fresh set of clothes for everyone. Like, I know it's being played for comedy, but come on, dude, that's a little excessive, preparing 2 extra sets of clothing for what should be a formal interview. Personally, I think the comedy hit a little harder in the manga. I think it might be an issue of adapting the content, I think that particular joke worked better in print. But, I still dig it. So here we have one of those unforeseen issues that Lloyd doesn't really know about. His anxiety is starting to affect Anya, where he's talking about, I wasn't this nervous infiltrating the Mafia, I wasn't this nervous preventing nuclear war with 1 second to spare. And Anya can hear all those thoughts. And while she might not understand the true meaning of it, she definitely understands I've never been this nervous. So Lloyd's done his research here. He knows all of the people who are performing the interview. The one professor is a pretty mild-mannered guy, and if they just give, sincere, good answers, that'll be fine. Of course, Lloyd can't necessarily be sincere and tell the truth, so he has to fudge things a little bit, I guess there's a kernel of truth to what he's saying about his interactions with Yor, but, many conversations over a period of time, that's stretching it a little bit. So now we have the housemaster, Mr. Swan. And based on Lloyd's research, this guy's just the exact kind of upper-class fop you would expect to find at Eden Academy. The product of nepotism. He's only a housemaster because his father was the former dean of the academy. And in addition to all that, he's just a real jerk. So once again, Lloyd's just giving, textbook perfect answers to all of the questions. Even to, the relatively tough questions, I think he's got it pretty locked down. He's asked to describe Anya, her good points and her bad points. And I think he's picked a pretty good answer about her being curious and inquisitive. I feel like calling her a picky eater is a bit of a cop-out of an answer, but maybe that's a cultural thing, because I don't know, I think all kids are picky eaters to a degree. So now Mr. Swan is making a bit of a mountain out of a molehill here regarding Yor and I guess her role in the household. You know, as it would turn out, she's not really much of a cook, but she does clean, so Lloyd does the cooking. You know, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not a big deal, but in a place like this, there are definitely those that would consider it beneath them to associate with people like that. So Anya is really starting to understand the gravity of the situation because she knows that Swan just has it out for her adoptive parents. Of course, you know, you also have to remember that she's just a kid, and specifically, she's younger than she had sort of presented herself to be. So, in accordance with being a kid, you know, she doesn't always memorize things very well, especially because she has the crutch of mind reading to lean on. So, she kind of just said what Lloyd was thinking, which doesn't exactly line up with an ideal answer, but, you know, if you sort of twist and interpret what she's saying, you can kind of arrive at a satisfactory answer. I think it's also interesting how they sort of adapt, not like a speech impediment, but like little mispronunciations in the subtitles for Anya. Just because, you know, kids don't always speak very well, and speaking clearly and legibly, I guess for want of a better term, is a pretty difficult thing, you know. So once again, Mr. Swan has to stick his nose into things. And given the pretense that Yor is merely an adoptive mother, a second wife, he's having Anya rate which of her two mothers she likes more. We don't know anything about Anya's actual mom, but we do know that this is, in all likelihood, a very sore subject. And that takes a real special kind of evil person to rub something like that into a child. You know, perhaps understandably, neither Yor nor Lloyd are taking this very well. You know, I think, to their credit somewhat, Henderson and the other guy seem somewhat uncomfortable by Mr. Swan being such a jerk. So, probably for the best, Lloyd was the one to snap first, and he smashed the table under the guise of swatting a mosquito. Probably not the best outlet, but he leaves with the parting shot of saying that, you know, if this is how you treat prospective students, then perhaps Eden Academy's reputation is undeserved. And it seems like Henderson's really taking that to heart. Here we go, that's what I was waiting for. Henderson is our man. Ah, that was a well-deserved punch to the face. So back at the Forger residence, they're pretty sure they blew it. And Lloyd seems to be taking it, pretty hard, considering he's, as far as I know, never failed a mission thus far. But even worse, Anya's taking it really hard too, because she thinks it's her fault. And of course, I suppose the reasoning behind all of this isn't necessarily that Anya's sad about her actual mother. As far as I've read in the manga, we don't know anything about that. But I think it's more that, if they don't get into the school, what's the point of staying together as a family unit? And based on what Anya said, she really likes being around Yor and Lloyd. And if they were to just dump her back in an orphanage again, then what was the point of doing any of this? So Yor and Anya managed to talk a little sense into him, and with a cup of tea, they try to keep an optimistic outlook about getting into Eden Academy. With that, we leave it on a cliffhanger. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.